The icing for the decoration, but first we're going to begin with the cake.
Okay.
Are you ready to begin?
I'm ready.
I am showing you these pots because everything that is essential to know about my sculpture originates from my study of ceramics. My aesthetic comes from investigating the intimate interaction with a handheld object. Looking at these two pots, we can talk about the breath, the space inside the form, how it relates to the shape of the human body, how the lip encloses the space, the mystery of the lid, the question of what is contained that the closure raises, and the lip punctuates. How the hand knows what the eye sees, what it is to lift off the lid and look inside. It is that impulse, that desire to interact, that is of particular interest to me. This interest translates to sculpture with the observation of how objects interact, their relationship to each other and the world they sit in, as well as my interaction with them on both a physical and conceptual level. I am most interested in the space between things. I've always made things. The act is as simple as breathing and as automatic. It is as difficult as lifting a ton of bricks, and sometimes it is a piece of cake. Part of my being an artist is to ask myself questions of my ideas, process, and materials. The idea for a piece usually dictates the materials I use. I believe I must often risk something in order to get anything worthwhile, and that the answers I get are only as good as the questions I ask. I've never stopped working in clay. I started having ideas that needed to be made in other materials. I am very interested in what is communicated by the eye, the form of an object, the weight, the texture, the temperature. Employing this knowledge, I know without touching what it is to pull open a drawer, to hold a cup. This activity sets up a state of anticipation, of a desire to interact. Coming from a background based in utilitarian functional forms, I initially made sculptures that were objects that related to the familiar and assigned them other definitions. A chair as a position or a point of view taken in a conversation, a table as a conversation itself. Grass has often been present in many of my sculptures. It is unknown, like taking a pot and putting it in a kiln. You never know how the piece will look until the grass begins to grow and gives the work a life of its own, which eventually dies and then lives only in the memory. It's a mystery to me, and it's one thing that I deliberately try not to analyze. It's not just the color or the texture that I'm drawn to, but the abundance of it. The single blade versus the blades together, which make the mass and the form. I have an obsessive interest in the repetition of a single thing. It has something to do with the peripheral view. I think that things which are seen quickly and at a glance out of the corner of your eye are important to getting visual information. How light makes a pattern, a design, positive and negative spaces that rise out of a shadow or a repeated image, a stack of chairs, a pile of plates. Really simple elements that fascinate me. The cone form and its variation of the funnel have dualities. Inside, outside, male, female, giving and receiving. The form points in a direction, focuses energy, and implies movement, whether standing still or lying down. It is a utilitarian form full of metaphors. I have used it often as I would a favorite word or phrase. I'm not a Gertrude Stein reader, but I was given an article several years ago that raised the question of repetition and if there really is such a thing. The idea is that repetition is really insistence. That interests me because there's something very obsessive about insisting, repeating one single thing. It is a visual device I use to engage attention. I'm drawn to repetition because it's easy to remember. It's that simple. By repeating something, it is insisted upon and you remember it. In the piece Wanting and Wishing, I use repetition of a single thing to refer to an obsession or insistence, while I asked myself, what does wanting look like? How is it different from wishing? From desire, from hoping? Often I exaggerate a form in order to examine it more closely and then to re-examine it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.